It's warmer this way, isn't it? Our hands became intertwined in my pocket. I had never even held a woman's hand before, and panicked terribly. "Hey, Emily, what are you doing?" As I hurriedly tried to pull my hand away, she gripped it tighter and said with a smile, "I've decided not to hide it anymore. My name is Michael, and I'm 31 years old. Right now, I'm reluctantly putting on a shirt I don't usually wear for a high school reunion, sighing in front of the mirror, thinking, I don't want to go, maybe I should skip it." Suddenly, my phone rings. Annoyed, I answer it, and the woman on the other end immediately says, "Are you ready? Have you left your house yet? Don't tell me you're still hesitating in front of the mirror because you don't want to go." She guessed my situation exactly. There's no way that's the case. I hastily moved away from the mirror. "Then hurry up and go, right now." Her shrill voice spurred me on, and I grabbed my bag and rushed out the door. Today is the high school reunion. Normally, I make up excuses not to go, but the woman I just spoke with on the phone insisted I attend, so I reluctantly agreed. Although I understand the reasons for going, my emotions are different, and my steps are heavy. As I walk slowly towards the reunion venue, a man brusquely passes by me. He stops at the traffic light ahead. Then, glancing at me, he exclaims, "Michael, is that you, Michael?" and approaches me. The first person I run into is someone I'd rather not meet. "It's me, John, remember, long time no see." The man talking to me without regard for my frowning face was the popular guy in high school, John, always at the center of things. Tall, handsome, popular, he was always enthusiastic during school festivals and sports days, lifting everyone's spirits. John now walks beside me, matching my pace. "You finally made it. All my invitations finally paid off. I thought you'd never come. You were always so quiet in high school, always reading books." Labeled as a quiet kid. Indeed, I was always reading books outside of class. I loved historical books. But what he might not realize. Since meeting John, I haven't said a word. Despite my silence, he keeps talking. What mental strength he must have. I've just been quietly observing John. Am I the only one talking? "How have you been?" "Been well." Finally, he seems to notice my silence. I give her a smile and reply, "I've been fine." John laughs at my response. "You don't look fine at all. What are you working as?" "I'm in securities now. Suits me, right? What about you? You must be doing some dull job." "Want me to refer you somewhere? I have a few connections." Again, he rambles on without giving me a chance to speak. "No need to worry about me," I reply, and John looks at me with pity. Are you really okay? You seem to be struggling." Saying this, he looks down at my feet. Puzzled, I look down and see my familiar sandals in my field of vision. In my haste, it seems I left the house in my usual sandals instead of the leather shoes I had prepared. I lose all motivation to attend the reunion. As I was thinking about going back home, suddenly, John pulled my arm. I was led into an alleyway between buildings. "What's this all of a sudden?" To my protest, John placed his index finger to his lips and whispered, "Shh, there's a really beautiful woman over there." I felt deflated at John's words. "So what?" I replied without even looking in that direction. "She seems to be waiting for someone. Keeps looking around. Maybe I should go talk to her." John, with a gleam in his eye, was peeking towards the street. "Do whatever you want, but why do I have to hide with you?" As I was grumbling to myself, John said, "I'm going to talk to her. Watch my courage. I'll impress her with my Chinese." With that, he left me in the alleyway and darted off. Chinese. The beautiful woman must be a foreigner. With a bad feeling, I stealthily peeked towards where John had gone. Just as I thought. I leaned against the building, holding my head. "Hey," I heard John's voice, speaking Chinese to the woman. I couldn't hear the woman's voice. Probably, she was ignoring him. Then, John started to babble something in Chinese. From the words I could catch, he seemed to be bragging about his job and asking for her contact information. After a while, I heard the woman's exasperated voice. "Can you please stop with that annoying bad accented Chinese? I can speak English." Her assertive voice echoed, and John was momentarily silenced. But he didn't back down. "Wow, your English is great. Awesome. Hey, why don't we go on a date? Just once. I earn a good salary, so I can take you anywhere you like. Even to places like San Francisco or Las Vegas." John switched to English and confidently continued his flirtation. The woman sharply replied, "I'm waiting for someone." But John persisted. "Is that a man? A woman? Do you have a boyfriend? It's rare to find a guy better looking and earning more than me. Why don't you give me a chance?" Interrupting John's words, the woman declared, "I have someone I really love. There's no one better than him, and of course, you are out of the question." Her piercing words left John stuttering. Who is he? There can't be such a guy. He was clearly shaken. I was shaken too. I hadn't thought she had someone like that. Then, the sound of heels approached. And then, it's this guy. Suddenly, my wrist was grabbed and I was pulled out of the alley. John looked stunned. My face must have looked even more foolish. "Huh?" As I uttered a silly sound, Emily, the Chinese woman, frowned at me. Even with that expression, she was incredibly beautiful. Her shimmering black hair was glossy, her eyes dark and exotic. Her skin was pale, and the freckles added a mature yet youthful look to her face. Her high nose bridge and full, attractive lips were striking. From those lips came an angry voice. "Why the sandals, Mr. Anderson?" Her high-pitched voice pierced my ears. "It's because of Emily. She rushed me to leave quickly. The person I had been on the phone with when I left was Emily." My defense was futile as she retorted, "That's why I kept telling you to put the sandals in the shoe cabinet. I knew you'd end up wearing them by mistake, and see, it happened just like I said." Speechless, I clammed up. Emily sighed and pulled something out of a paper bag, thrusting it at me. "Leather shoes." As I muttered, she raised her high nose even higher and said, "I thought this might happen, so I bought these. I'm glad I came to check if you were actually coming. On the way here, the thought of you in sandals crossed my mind. I thought it wouldn't hurt to buy a pair of dress shoes, just in case. I'm an excellent editor, aren't I?" Seeing her satisfied smile, I humbled myself. "You're the best editor in the world. Thank you." I took the shoes and changed out of my sandals. John, who had been watching the whole scene dumbfounded, finally spoke. "Wait, you know each other, and your favorite person is Michael. What's going on?" He was full of questions, with imaginary question marks floating above his head. Emily answered proudly. "Mr. Anderson is a rising best-selling author, and I'm his editor. As for my favorite person, that's irrelevant right now, isn't it?" Even John seemed taken aback by her unwavering smile. I let out a sigh. "Wait a minute, I'm not really a best-selling author or anything." As I started to speak, Emily cut in. "Stop downplaying yourself. Please focus on the interview. That's right, the reason I came to the reunion. It was. I am rather plain and have a hard time imagining a protagonist with a cheerful personality. My characters always turn out gloomy and unremarkable, so I came to interview people who had a bright and fulfilling high school life. John was the perfect candidate. So, I asked him directly. So, John, would you mind if I interviewed you? John chuckled at my straightforward request. What, am I just a stepping stone for you? Wait, you're an author now, writing novels. Now it was my turn to chuckle. Well, I write under a different name, both children's books and novels. I'd like to write historical fiction, but I'm lacking in that area. So I've been writing young adult novels. Emily here is pretty demanding, I said, glancing at Emily with a frown. Emily, 7 years younger and my new editor at a publishing company, pointed out my slump in historical fiction. Mr. Anderson, heartwarming stories suit you better. How about a young adult novel, something a bit touching? She insisted. This made me resist her suggestion. I could handle short stories like children's books, but I couldn't write long, tear-jerking narratives. However, Emily, with her direct gaze, convinced me. You can do it, Mr. Anderson. It's perfect for you. Please trust me and try this direction for your next book, please, she pleaded. The young adult novel we reluctantly collaborated on. About a plain guy like me who becomes a runner in a district relay race and experiences family bonds, friendship, and a little romance. Turned out to be a moderate hit. As Emily and I worked together, my writing flowed more smoothly and the story developed effortlessly. It became my best-selling book and remains my most well-known work. Still, I aim to write historical fiction. Whenever the topic of my next book comes up, I always suggest it. But Emily's response is always hesitant. If it's about a modern-day high schooler encountering a historical figure back from the dead, then maybe I'll consider it. Hearing this, John looked utterly amazed. Wow, I don't read novels much, so I didn't know, but if it's that amazing, I may give it a try, John said, and I hastily shook my head. Don't read it. You really don't have to. John burst into laughter at my panicked reaction. Don't be so against it, but I get it. A plain guy as a protagonist. That means it's about you, right? I blushed deeply. The foundation of that story was entirely a product of my experiences mixed with my imagination. One time I was forced to participate in a district marathon because my mother was one of the organizers, and it was a complete disaster. But in the novel, I altered the outcome. The friendship depicted was merely a figment of my imagination. A plain guy who always buried himself in books and romance. That was even more of a fantasy, a distant world for me. The thought of my high school classmates reading that book and recalling me sent shivers down my spine. After a good laugh, John said, Okay, I won't ask for the title. I can probably find it if I search, but hey. A little teasing like this is fine, right? Being on good terms with such a stunning beauty, I'm jealous. I have completely forgotten because of the scandal incident, but come to think of it, didn't Emily call me her favorite person? The realization made my head spin, and I was no longer in the right state of mind for interviews or the reunion. Since I couldn't focus, I decided to record the interview content. After about 2 hours, when the reunion ended and I left the venue, Emily was waiting outside. Her cheeks were flushed. In the winter season. How long had she been waiting? I rushed over to Emily. You didn't have to wait. I handed her a hand warmer from my pocket. It was still slightly warm. She took it and showed a smile. It's warm, thank you, but then she forcefully slid her hand into my pocket and intertwined it with mine. It's warmer this way, isn't it? Our hands became intertwined in my pocket. I had never even held a woman's hand before and panicked terribly. Hey, Emily, what are you doing? As I tried to pull my hand away in a hurry, she gripped it tighter and said with a smile, I've decided not to hide it anymore. She leaned closer to me. Were you thinking about me these past 2 hours? Feeling the warmth from where she touched me, my body heated up. It was a completely different atmosphere from usual. Shall we go somewhere, preferably somewhere we can be alone? Hearing this, my mind nearly short-circuited. Eventually, we headed to my apartment, my workspace. Emily said she had a somewhat sensitive matter to discuss. Since it's also my workplace, Emily, being my editor, frequently comes in and out. Trying to stay calm in a situation where we were alone, my heart wouldn't stop racing. Emily, familiar with my kitchen, made tea and sat across from me. I looked down at my tea, waiting for Emily to speak. "Mr. Anderson, were you surprised about me liking you?" Her casual mention of liking made my heart race. "Really? Is it true? Not just a lie to get rid of John?" I asked, and Emily's expression turned serious. "It's really true. I decided to become an editor here because of you, Mr. Anderson. I studied English really hard for that." Emily's English was indeed fluent. She wouldn't have become an editor in America otherwise. "The reason is me." "What do you mean by that?" I struggled to grasp her meaning. Then, Emily took out a picture book from her large bag, handling it carefully. Seeing the book, I was astonished. It was my first published picture book. A little boy, angel in the sky, chooses which parents to be born to. The parents he chooses eventually start to argue and drift apart. Born to be the child of a couple who once seemed happy, the boy makes a decision one day. To bring smiles back to his parents' faces, he decides, "I will be the light of happiness in our home," and tries to never lose his smile. He decorates the house with beautiful pictures, flowers he finds on the roadside, and cutesy shells from the beach. Little by little, lights of happiness begin to shine in the home. These lights eventually reach the mother, then the father, and finally, they bring back the smiles of both parents. This picture book was the first work I ever submitted to a publishing house, and luckily, it won a prize and was published. Afterwards, the picture book didn't do too well, so I shifted to writing novels. But it's a work that holds a lot of sentimental value for me. I first became interested in America because I heard that the American people are friendly and the cities are well maintained. Emily began, looking fondly at the slightly worn picture book. "My parents had a bad relationship when I was about 13, constantly fighting. Besides, the house was always a mess. I wanted to escape to a world that was friendly and free of clutter. I just wanted to get away from that house." I listened to Emily's story with a solemn expression, feeling a sharp twinge deep in my heart. One day, I thought, I should go to America. I should learn English, but just studying was boring. So, I decided to read stories. I've always loved reading since I was a child. Then, she searched the internet for books in simple English. Thinking picture books would be written in easy language, she checked the contents of several. Among them, she came across my picture book. I didn't quite understand it, but I was drawn to it. Even before fully understanding the content, I thought, this is it. She was surprised when she read the book she had ordered. I felt strongly, this angel boy is me. I was born to be happy, yet not happy. Did I do anything to become happy? No, I just disliked the status quo. Like the boy in the book, I decided to increase my smiles one by one. Despite her parents' moodiness, she kept smiling. She gave her father birthday presents and cleaned the house when her mother didn't. The cleaned house felt refreshing, like little lights of happiness were being lit. Patiently, she continued to light these small lights, untangling each tangled thread, one by one. And the result? I hesitantly asked, and she looked down, taking out her phone. She then showed me the screen with a smile. There was a lovely photo of Emily, smiling closely with a middle-aged couple at what seemed to be an airport. It worked out. Emily nodded with a broad smile. It was tough, especially at the beginning, but now, my parents are really close. They even apologized to me. They remembered that they loved each other and got married. Really, it's all thanks to this picture book. As she finished speaking, she looked at me in surprise. I was crying. "Mr. Anderson, what's wrong? Did I say something bad?" I wiped my tears and shook my head. It's me. As I strained to speak, Emily asked softly, "What is it?" "It's just that angel protagonist is me from my high school days." My voice was choked as I spoke, and I sensed Emily's surprise. My parents got along fairly well, I think. My father was busy with work, a bit strict, but he made a great effort to spend time with the family on his rare days off. My mother was a homemaker, always supporting my father with a smile. Their relationship soured after my father had an affair. It was a brief, frivolous relationship, but my mother's intuition was sharp, and she soon found out. My father became defensive, and my mother chose not to divorce for the sake of our living. Since then, it's been like a silent separation in our house. That family in the book is mine. The reconciliation, just a dream of mine. The last scene of the book shows a happy family of 3 enjoying an amusement park. My childhood memories of going to an amusement park are still vividly joyful. But my family never got along. It's been nearly 10 years since I left home. My parents still continue their cold relationship. They could have divorced, and there were some ways to make a living. But my mother is not the type to take action. My father, whether he understands my mother's feelings or not, does no household chores and is still working. I haven't returned home for years, and my parents haven't asked me to come back. I wrote that book, but I never really put in any effort. It was just a wish, splattered onto the manuscript, but I'm glad. I wiped my tears and managed a thin smile. Someone was saved by looking at that picture book. Unlike me, a child who actually made an effort. Thank you, Emily, for telling me that my book had a meaning. As I took Emily's hand to express my gratitude, she smiled. I should be the one thanking you. That picture book held my family together and gave me a big goal to pursue. As I gazed at Emily, she formed a smile. I became determined to be involved in the work of the person who wrote that book. It gave me so much motivation. I applied to the publishing house that published most of Mr. Anderson's works and passionately talked about him during my interview, and then the first offer they assigned me to was Mr. Anderson. I'm so lucky. The people at the publishing house are really kind. Emily said this with a full smile, but the truth was probably different. I was probably a difficult author for the publishing house to handle. I'm reserved, without significant accomplishments. Despite not having great ideas, I'm fixated on historical fiction. That picture book was just something I wrote as a break from writing historical novels when I was in high school, using my own family as a model. It was a decent piece, so I just happened to submit it to a contest. Then I became an author who wasn't doing well. For someone who eagerly wanted to be my editor, the publishing house must have been thrilled. As I gave her a smile, Emily smiled back. Any path is fine. I'm happy to be Mr. Anderson's editor now, and to be able to create works with him. My dream has come true. Emily genuinely smiled, satisfied. I'm greedy, so I have another dream now. Emily looked straight at me and said, I want to become the angel boy for Mr. Anderson's parents. Her black eyes sparkled as she spoke. Mr. Anderson, your father and your mother, I want to rekindle the bond between the 3 of you, and of course, I want to do that as your wife. I was taken aback by her words. I can do it. I'll light up each lamp in Mr. Anderson's family home. So, Emily leaned in close to me. Make me your wife, Mr. Anderson. I was almost swayed by her cuteness. But, Emily, you've made so much effort. Reconciling your parents, mastering English, getting into an English publishing company, and compared to you, I've made no effort. Not with my parents, not with my writing. I can't stand proudly beside you unless I make an effort in something. As I spoke earnestly, Emily looked surprised. Mr. Anderson, you are making an effort. Confused, I looked at her, and she smiled. I know you've been visiting museums and ordering difficult materials to write historical fiction. That was something I didn't want to be known. Embarrassed, I blushed deeply. And your novels afterwards. My heart skipped a beat. They always referred to your childhood stories. I thought you had a wonderful childhood, but it was different. Those were the lights you wanted to bring to your own family. Hearing this, I couldn't help but tear up again. And really, a child doesn't have to work so hard. Just the fact that you want to try is admirable. Emily gently hugged me. You'll make me your wife, right? I nodded repeatedly in her embrace. I felt pathetic, crying in the arms of someone 7 years younger. As I confessed this, she confidently said, I'll take so much care of you, and I just melted. Later, I properly confessed to Emily. That day had been too one-sided. Dressed in her favorite suits, I was on my knee before her. I love your earnest efforts. I will protect you for a lifetime. Please marry me. Emily was moved to tears and immediately wanted to meet my parents. Right now, surprised by my reaction, Emily said with a wink, strike while the iron is hot, right? Eventually, we went straight to my parents' house, 2 hours away, bringing a foreign beauty home so suddenly. My parents were shocked. But Emily quickly won their hearts. Before we knew it, she had created a group chat with my parents. Emily sent pictures of small moments of happiness to the group every day. The color of the clear sky, a contentedly sleeping cat, a single resilient flower blooming through a crack in the asphalt, and a tiny sprout peeking out from a planter. Each photo was like lighting a small lamp, and my parents would reply with small messages, to which Emily and I would respond. Gradually, those connected lights began to shine brighter. Years later, who wants to go to Grandpa and Grandma's house? Emily asked, and our 2 children responded with excitement. Our son wanted to play soccer with Grandpa, and our daughter was eager to cook with Grandma. Even I felt my spirits lift. The lights Emily persistently lit now brightly illuminate my family home. The house, once filled with the cold air of a silent separation, now warmly welcomes us, with my parents greeting us with smiles. Lately, my father even sometimes cooks for us. He's been learning to cook, taking lessons from my mother. Who could have imagined such a scene? Yet, this was exactly the scenario I had dreamed of. Thank you, Emily, I said. She shook her head with a smile. It's only because you didn't give up, Michael, that I didn't either. Her radiant smile made me smile too. Sure, we might argue sometimes, but we always want to continue lighting those small lamps of happiness.